Hello, my name is Rick Simpson. I'm an artist here at the New Zone Gallery. I'm one of the featured artists this month of June. My background goes way, way back. I graduated with an MFA from the University of Oregon, and my original genre was printmaking. After I graduated, I ended up overseas in a job that had nothing to do with art, and I discovered Corel photo paint and never looked back. I'm probably the only purely digital painter in this gallery, and one of the few in the area. I've been doing this kind of work now for almost 25 years. My nom d'art is Altkunst, and that's a reflection of the time that I spent 13 years in Germany as absorbing the artistic influence there from the old masters to modern. I've been using Corel photo paint for about 25 years. It's gotten to the point now where I've been doing it so long, all of the work that I do is basically intuitive. I don't do any preparatory sketches. And basically the process is I create a virtual canvas, and then I paint a virtual picture, and then I have it printed on fine art paper, mounted, and then I put a clear acrylic glaze on it. Digital art is a very misunderstood medium. A lot of people think that the computer makes images, but it doesn't do anything that the artist doesn't want it to. You have virtual paintbrushes, you have virtual spray, you have virtual everything, but every element in every piece is conjured up by the artist using the Corel photo paint program. So none of it is created by the computer. The computer is simply a tool that is used to create the image and convey an imaginary image from the artist's mind onto a virtual blank canvas. This is a piece called Reliquary, and that term comes from one of my many visits to cathedrals in Europe. And if you go to a cathedral in Europe, you notice each one has a treasury. And in that treasury, you will find reliquaries. Reliquaries were designed to hold, for example, the bones or hair of saints or great religious figures. And to me, the reliquary basically represents death, because what is in there is death, but it does represent something that used to live. This piece basically is my version of a modern-day reliquary. You see there's a woman inside of a golden cage. I use a lot of metaphors in my work, and this could be like another meaning for like spouse abuse or imprisonment, things like that. In the bottom of this picture, you'll see in a cage there are also lots of skulls. These again represent death. It's not that I'm really a dark thinking or depressed individual, because I'm not. Some people ask me where I get my ideas, and what I have to do is say, sometimes I just don't know. It happens. When I create a digital painting, it just happens, and it develops almost on its own. But you can see there's a picture of an embryo there that could be a metaphor for hope, or the baby Jesus, whatever the viewer wants it to be. And I get a lot of comments about, well, what does this work represent? And some of the people who actually buy my work, they say, I don't want an explanation, I know what it means to me. I say, okay, well, that's perfect. So the final interpretation is always up to the viewer. And for example, when we had our opening on Friday, I had people who would stand there and just look at these pieces for the longest time. And they say, the longer I looked at it, the more I see. So anyway, that's Reliquary, and it's a piece that was in the Mayor's Art Show about 2 years ago, and I was really proud of that. So that's basically all about Reliquary. This is a piece called Perdition Now, and this came out of an idea that I had because of the pandemic. You'll notice the style of this is very different than anything I've ever done before. So before I go into the actual meeting, I will tell you how I came to create this image. I was doing a portrait of my friend using the bust of Nefertiti, the Egyptian queen. And if you squint at this piece, you can see a face, you can see the crown up on top, and it's like a statuary of Nefertiti, which resides in Berlin. I've seen it several times. It's an amazing piece of work. So I use that as a basis. I wanted to have something different. Instead of just putting her face on this friend of mine on that piece, I decided to make it a piece about the pandemic. The original image was about 3 by 4 inches, quite small. It was a JPEG. So what I did, I applied a special tool, it's called palette knife, to the entire image, and then I resized it to 18 by 30, and that's what I ended up with. It's the first time I had ever done that. Well, when I got finished with it, I looked and I said, well, let's make it something meaningful. So I put a halo of the coronavirus, and then I also put one right in the middle of her throat, representing the invasion of the coronavirus in the human being, the human body. And also down below, I put these little tentacle things. Again, some of the elements that I put in my work, they're being purely metaphorical, so they don't really mean anything visually, but conceptually, it's like something that will grip a human being and hold on to them, just like COVID-19 does. Anyway, and if you notice underneath the pedestal, there's an animal. And if you can see that, that was something that was purely unintentional. And I didn't try to design an animal in there, but if several viewers have looked at that and said, oh, there's an animal underneath there, what is that? Again, since I work intuitively, it may have been something that was in my subconscious. But this piece basically represents the pandemic and a lot of the elements, because if you look at the individual pieces, some people say, well, it looks like a shag carpet. Some people say, well, it looks like germs, whatever that squirming mass is to the average viewer, that's what it is, because it wasn't an intentional special effect. This is the piece called Pardon. I did this probably maybe 15 years ago, and with a lot of my images that sit in my archives, sometimes I will bring them forward again in the daylight and rework them. And that was one of these that I did last year. Basically, this is a depiction of the dissolution of a relationship. If you notice the gold band around the shoulders that are just entrapping him, this is a representative of a wedding band, and all of the dead goldfish that are hanging off of it represent dead dreams. I once did a piece called When the Horse Dies, and it was in the same series, and the old saying, when the horse dies, get off, sort of pertains to this one as well. But there's a feeling of entrapment, feeling of doom. The fish that are on the man's head represent the deadening of thoughts and emotions, and like I say, some of my metaphors are somewhat obtuse, but again, these are all intuitive. I said, why would I want to do that? Back in medieval days, people used to hang dead fish around the necks of thieves and to make them suffer while the fish was rotting away. And this is kind of like the dissolution of a marriage and a relationship. And that was my depiction of what I was going through at the time. This is the piece that I call Undone. This is another piece that I did during the pandemic. And once again, I took an old image that I'd done maybe 20 years ago, pulled it out of my archives and completely reworked it. The title being Undone is kind of indicative of what a lot of people are going through during this pandemic. And I'm not coming undone, but I see a lot of people who are having, stress and depression and all this. But it's the personality during this period, they just sort of come apart, come unglued, come undone. And if you notice, there's still a face in the background that represents their true self and what they're going to go back to when this whole pandemic is over. This piece was in an international art show up in Seattle. I'm a member of the Society for Art of Imagination, and I was in their jury show. I had 2 pieces in there actually, and this was one of them. So this is one of the favorite pieces that I've ever done. It really speaks to a lot of people about how they're feeling and what they're going through.